Hello, welcome back to Life Enrichment with Hank Ballinger. Today I want to go over buying property with no money down. Now, that idea usually resonates with people and they really like the idea. I have to come out of pocket with no money, but yet I get property. Now, it is possible. I remember years ago, the first time I ever heard this concept, there was a series of tapes. Now, this is back when I listened to cassette tapes, so that tells you how long ago this has been. And there was a fellow by the name of Carlton Sheets, had a series out on how to buy a property, no money down. Well, I was interested, so I listened to all 24 tapes. And there was many ways that you can buy property with no money down. Now, we're going to go through some today. By no means are we going through everything he did on all 24 of those tapes, but it was a very good tape series. Today, we have podcasts. You can get on your smartphone. You could probably find thousands of podcasts telling you how to do that. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're an aggressive type person, there is a lot of ways that you can get money with no money down or very little money down out of your pocket. So we're going to go over a few of those, but just be it known, there are a lot of ways you can get property in your name with no money or very little money out of your pocket. Okay, so let's get started and let's go through here. So we want to talk about buying property with no money down through what's called creative financing. And from time to time on this podcast, we're going to talk about creative financing, different ways to buy property creatively, different ways you can do that. So obviously, one way you can buy property is through a conventional loan. Now, that's not hard, not very creative at all. You go to any bank, if you got a good credit standing with the bank, you got a good credit score, your credit history is good. You go to a bank, and especially if you already have some real estate, any bank probably will give you a conventional loan, meaning if it's a $100,000 property, the bank will put up $80,000, you put up $20,000, you get the property. If it's $1 million property, the bank will put up 80% or $800,000. You put up $200,000, you get the property. Most banks are all right with that, and that's not a hard sell for a bank. They will give you that loan. But let's say you don't have that amount of money. So let's say, and I always like using good round numbers, $100,000 property or $1 million property or $10 million. So today we're going to look at buying a $100,000 piece of property. Okay, so if you find a property that's a $100,000 property and you say, but I don't have $20,000. I got about $11,000, but I don't have 20. You could still get that property. Now, you could come out of pocket with 10,000 or 10%. Well, you have that much. So you put down the 10% and you could do an owner finance of 10%. And what that means is the owner, the guy selling you the property, literally takes a lien against the property a second after the bank, and you owe the seller on that $10,000 that he carries. Now, how do you set that up? Well, that's between you and the seller. It's a piece of paper. You write on it what you both can agree to. He may say, I want this back in 5 years. So you amortize it on 5 years, or you may amortize it on 10 years or amortize it on 20 years, but pay him as if it's amortized in 5 or 10, or on 10 or 20 years, but then pay him off in 5 years. Refinance after 5 years. If you think you can get the value of that property up, it's a good way to go. Say, hey, we'll amortize this on 10 or 20 years, but in 5 years, I'll refinance the property. I think I can get the rents up. In 5 years, I'll pay you off. I've done that several times. Works really well. And most of the time, especially if an owner can't sell a property, they are generally willing to do an owner finance, because at least they get 90% up front, and then the other 10% they will get with interest a little slower. Now let's look at another way. Let's say, again, he's got a piece of property for sale that's a $100,000 piece of property, but he hadn't been able to sell it. And you look at that and you say, listen, I don't have $20,000. And you ask him, will you do just a regular owner finance? And he said, no, I'm kind of wanting $100,000. So now we're going to get a little creative. So you go to him and you know, let's say his rents are a little low, and you know you can get those rents up. You can get the value of the property up, because on rental property, the value of the property is tied to the income. If you get the rents up, you've raised the value of the property and the amount the banks will loan you against that property. So let's say you go to this seller and he's asking $100,000, and you go to him and you say, listen, would you take $110,000? Now, most owners, when you do that, they're going to say, okay, buddy, what's your angle here? What are you getting at? What are you doing? So you just ask him, would you take $110,000? And he may say, well, yeah. And you say, okay, I'll give you 110, but you have to give me the terms. The first question he's going to ask you is, what's your terms? And I did something very similar to this. I've done it before. So you go to him, you say, listen, I'm going to give you 110,000, not all at once, but what I would like to do is I will have 20% down, but what I need you to do is carry $11,000, or 10% of the sale price. He carries. But you'll see here in a minute, you're going to put that off into the future a little ways. You're going to put 20% down of the 110,000. You're putting 22,000 down. 11,000 comes out of your pocket. Remember a while ago, you didn't have 20,000, but you do have 11,000. So you can get this property with 11,000 out of pocket, and he's going to carry 11,000. Now, the amount the bank has to ante up, the amount of the bank has to pay, is they got to pay him 88,000. You're going to pay 11,000 out of pocket. So on the day of closing, you're going to pay him $99,000. Now remember, he wanted 100,000. So you tell him, if we do it this way, you're going to make $99,000 at closing, but you're going to make an additional 11,000, and we can set that up on payments per month. I can pay you 3, 4, 5% interest over 5 years, aim it on 10 or 20 years, and I pay you off in 5. However you want to set it up, with whatever interest rate. That piece of paper sits there, you got to figure out the terms. But here's what I've done before. I go to the seller and say, listen, if you can't sell this property, let's work out something like this. I'll pay you more than you're asking, but you carry part of it. You're getting 80% from the bank, about 10% out of my pocket, and you're getting almost what you want at closing to start with on this amount you carry. And I've done this. I say you carry that for 5 years with 0% interest, and in 5 years, I pay you the 11,000. And it works. So in essence, they get almost what they want on closing, and in 5 years, they get an additional $11,000. Now, yes, they have a second lien against your property for that 5 years, but it's a good way to get the property with less out of pocket. Now, remember I said buy property with no money down. This is not with no money down. But let's look at some ways that you literally can buy property with no money down. Now, I haven't done all of these, but I have done probably most of these. Partners. That is a good way, especially when you're just starting in real estate. If you're just starting, sometimes you don't have all of the money you need for all of the property, especially if you're aggressive. You will not have all the money you need to buy all the property you want. Sometimes you may have to take on partners. Now, what I did one time is there was a property, a realtor asked me if I was interested in it, and I said yes. So he took me and showed me this property, and it was a little over $1 million, and I had brought a piece of property the month before and the month before that. I didn't have any money. So remember, we're looking at creative financing. You figure out a way. You work it out to where you have the money and you get in on the deal. Better to have some of the pie than none of the pie. Better to have 15 or 20 or 25% of the pie than 100% of none of it. So what I did is I went and looked at this property, nice property. I said, what's the income? The income hit the 1% rule. Now the 1% rule, remember, is if they're asking $1 million, if it's bringing in 1% of that, or 10,000, it's worth the $1 million. Or if they're asking 2 million and it's bringing in 20,000, it's worth the 2 million. So I looked and it was worth what they were asking. It fit the 1% rule, but I didn't have the money. So I said, well, I'll get the money. So I called up a guy and I said, listen, I've got a piece of property over here. I'm not going to tell you where it's at, but I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. And I had been partners with him before on property. And I said, if you will find a money man, I've got the property. You find the money man. We will go in third, and third on this property. The money man puts up the money, but he never has to take a call. And I said, told my partner, I said, if you will take the calls and manage the property, I will do all the maintenance. And that's what we did. The money guy put up the money. The other guy did the maintenance, or the management, and I did the maintenance. And we entered the property and bought the property. And the day that we closed on that property, I got a third of that equity. So I came out of pocket with nothing, but on the day of closing, as soon as we bought that property, the amount of money that you put in, a third of that was mine. Now, we kept that property for 7 or 8 years, and then I eventually sold out of that property and made good money on the property and just invested it back into other property. But getting partners sometimes is a good way to buy and to get into other property and to buy additional property. Now, just a little caveat here, a little word of advice. You may want to look this statistic up, but about 85% of partnerships end badly. Okay, so before you enter into a partnership, do some due diligence. First of all, make sure it's somebody you can get along with. Second of all, make sure that your ideas and your methods of running property and managing and maintaining that property are very similar. If your ideas are one thing and their ideas are something else, that may not work very well. So make sure that you and the partners have very similar ideas on your ethics, your morals, how you operate a property, how you don't operate a property. Very important that you do that. Second of all, hard money. Now, what is hard money? Believe it or not, and I really don't care where you live in continental USA, if you have a smartphone, you can look up on your smartphone and either type in hard money and type in the area. And I live in Kentucky. I live in Richmond, Kentucky. So if I typed in Kentucky and Richmond, Kentucky, it would give me a list of hard money lenders in this area. And you can do that in any area in America. So interestingly enough, there are people out there who have money that want to loan money. They just need somebody to take that money. You may be that person. So these hard money lenders, sometimes they're called angel lenders. And you may type in either hard money lenders or angel lenders. And then it'll give you a list of people in your area that will loan money out. Now, interesting thing about hard money. Why is it called hard money? Why isn't it just money like with the bank loans out? Well, because hard money, a little different criteria. Generally, first of all, their interest rates are much higher than a normal bank. And second of all, they want that money back quickly, sometimes 6 months to a year. Sometimes they'll go a little over a year, but about 18 months to 24 months, they want their money back with high interest. So before you borrow hard money, make sure you do all of your due diligence. Make sure that you can pay that back. Make sure that debt service doesn't make you exceed the amount of money you got coming in to where your expenses are greater than your income. So you want to make sure, even with hard money, your expenses are lower than your income. Your income's here. Even with hard money, your expenses are lower than your income. That way you have cash flow. If you don't cash flow, don't do the hard money. Don't do any deal if it don't cash flow from day one. Now on hard money, a lot of times what people will do, sometimes you'll go to the bank and want a loan from a bank, just a conventional bank, a primary bank. And sometimes that bank will say, you know what, it's not that we don't trust you, but we really don't know that we really like that property. It's a little run down, maybe it has some problems. We just really don't trust that property. But you look at the property and instead of seeing an eyesore, what you see is opportunity. They're asking prices way down here. You know you can get that property up in about 5-6 months. If you go in there, do a lot of the sweat equity, you do the labor, you get the things fixed up, you can get the value of that property raised up, and it's going to look better, do some cosmetic stuff inside, outside, so when the bank comes back in 6 months, they will give you that loan. So a lot of times, here's what people do with hard money. They will borrow the hard money. Now remember, it's got to click from day one. You've got to make more income than expenses, even with hard money. And if you can make it with hard money, when you convert it to a conventional loan, your expenses will be less. So you got hard money, you go out and you borrow the hard money, sometimes 100% of it right off from day one, sometimes not. You get the property, you fix it up, and in 6 months to a year, you refinance, and now you go back to that bank that said, we don't trust that property, and you let them look at it, you let them walk through, you show them everything you did. You have a list of everything you have done to the property. You give them that list, and put everything on that list, even if it's really small stuff. That way, the bigger that list looks, the more it looks like you've done. So list it all, put it all on there. Then you go back to that bank, and then that bank will give you that loan. Now, many times on a property like that, a bank won't give you the initial loan. They just don't like the property. Sometimes if you get hard money or do it other ways, then after 6 or 8 months, 12 months, they will then give you a loan on that property, and they will make that loan to you. So hard money works sometimes, but be cautious with hard money. Now, hard money is not the same as loan sharks. These guys are not going to break your kneecaps if you don't pay them, but they will take your property. So just make sure that when you do this, you do all your due diligence. Investors pay the down payment. Now let's say, again, you're looking at a $100,000 property, and the owner says, I won't do any owner finance. I want my $100,000 the day of closing. But you have an aunt or an uncle or somebody that says, you know what? Yeah, if you'll give me a good return, maybe you've got some property, and now people are starting to trust you. They see that you know what you're doing, but you don't have the $20,000 to buy this property. So an aunt or an uncle or maybe somebody you know, maybe they've got some money. You ask them, and you say, I'll give you a good return. So you borrow 80% from the bank, the $100,000, or the $80,000 from the bank, and the $20,000 you may borrow from a relative or from somebody you know that has some money. And then you pay them back with interest. Again, no money come out of your pocket, but you still got the property. And in the future, as you pay that debt down or raise the value of the property, you can still borrow against that property that you have nothing in and buy another property. And then as you pay those down and get the rents up, you can borrow from those two and buy 2 more. Then you can get the payments down, the value up on the 4, and buy 8. And you did all of that with no money out of pocket. And if you got no money out of pocket, how many times could you repeat that process? Well, a lot, because then you have access to all the money in the world. Now, when you realize you have access to all the money of the world, now you're not very limited. When you realize I can only have my money, you're very limited. I don't care who you are, even if you're Jeff Bezos or Warren Buffett. If you only have your money, you're limited. But once you realize I can use everybody's money, all the bank's money, anybody's money, you're not limited. Now, let's say you go to somebody and somebody had a $100,000 property for sale, and they've had that thing for sale for 2-3 years, can't sell it. You may go to them and say, listen, I know you've had a little bit of trouble selling this, but I tell you what, and a lot of times the people that are good recipients for this are older people. They get tired of running this property. They don't want the property. And you may say, listen, I tell you what, if you will let me pay you, I will make the payment to you just like I would make the payment to the bank, and I will pay you interest. So in essence, you sit down and you show them, we will amortize this on 20, 25 years, 30, whatever they want to do. Now, generally, if they're older, they may not want to go 25 or 30 years. So you may have to look at 15 or 20 and say, let's put this under an agreement, and I will buy this from you, and I will pay you payments for 5 or 10 years, and then you'll have enough equity in it, you can go to the bank and get a conventional loan. And sometimes the seller becomes the bank. You make the payments directly to the seller. There is no bank involved from day one. They don't pay 80%. You just start paying. Now there's contracts you have to sign. You still go through the lawyers and get this thing drawn up. So the seller becomes the bank, and you make your payments to the seller with no money out of pocket. Then eventually you go to the bank and get a loan, whether it's 5 years or 10 years, whatever you can agree with the seller. You go get a loan from a conventional bank, and then you pay him off, and it's still 100% financed from a bank, but zero out of your pocket. Now, when you look at things like this, and you look at podcasts on your smartphone, when you look at all those, the creative financing, and there are many, many ways to do any of these deals, all kinds of ways. Get creative, figure out ways to buy property. I don't go out looking for property with no money out of pocket, but when I find one, well, it's kind of nice to get those properties. So if you get them, great. But here's the thing, when you're looking at ways to buy property, what I teach wealth building classes. In my classes, I teach creative financing. I do not teach competitive financing. Now, creative financing means if there's a realtor involved, I want to make sure that realtor gets everything they're supposed to get. I saw a guy one time cut realtors out of a commission. None of those realtors ever wanted to work with that guy again. They will never work with that guy. So if a realtor's involved, you make sure they get every penny that's coming to them. If there's a banker involved, don't make your payments late. Don't try to cut them. Don't try to hoodoo them. You want that bank working with you. And one banker may tell another banker, if you try to cut them, one banker tells another, and tells another, tells another, now you can't get a loan. So you want the banks, many times they're putting up at least 80, sometimes 85% of the money. You want those guys working with you. So creative financing says everybody that works with you, you don't cut a seller. If he's making a deal with you, you don't cut him out of anything that you owe him. You make sure he gets everything that you owe him. Creative financing makes sure everybody that you work with makes money. Competitive says, I will cut everybody and I'll try to get this as cheap and cut everybody. I do not teach and I don't encourage competitive financing, but this is a lot of fun. You help everybody. Remember the guy that couldn't sell his property? You may come up with a creative way that will help him get rid of that property and make an income from it. This guy that he couldn't sell this property, so you went up on the price. Nobody else does that. Everybody else is trying to get him to come down from $100,000, and you're going up on the price. But it's still, you have less money out of pocket, so it works. A lot of these ways, you're getting partners. These partners are still getting money. Every one of these ways, you're making money, you're building wealth, but you're encouraging everybody else. Now, if you do creative financing, every time a realtor sees you, they want to work with you. Every banker in town wants to work with you because they make money every time they loan you money. All the sellers, every time you work with somebody, and generally people that's in multifamily know other people that's in multifamily. Well, once all those multifamily owners get to know you and know that you're not going to hoodoo them, you're always making sure they get their money, they want to deal with you. So creative financing is by far the way to go, not competitive financing. Now, make sure everybody gets paid. Creative financing, always be honest and be ethical. You will go much farther. In creative financing, you can figure out a way to get most properties that you want. Just become very creative. So appreciate your time, appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Next time, we're going to be talking about what is money. Most of us think we know, but what is money? And then how does it work? Thank you very much.